All right. Christina says, I've been learning Czech for half a year using Duolingo. Why? But also outside of Duolingo resources. Granted, I'm Macedonian, and Macedonian and Czech are kind of similar because of the Slavic roots, but Duolingo can help, but you also need to use resources outside of it. My question is, why on earth would you use Duolingo at all? It's a massive waste of time. Especially if you're learning a language that is similar to your native one. Yeah, you need to use other resources outside of it. No, you need to use any other resource except Duolingo. If you're native speaker of a Slavic language and you're learning another Slavic language, this is one of those occasions where input is basically all you need in the beginning. You already know. I mean, I don't speak Czech or Macedonian, but I've learned several Slavic languages, and vocabulary and grammar is very similar. Vocabulary is very similar. You can probably look at it and start reading and understand maybe 70, 80%, I guess. And same when you're listening. So you can start with input only and memorize a few words here and there with associations. Just the words that are completely different. There are a few from Slavic language to Slavic language. And this applies, by the way, to Romance languages. If you speak Spanish and you learn in Portuguese, or you speak Italian, you learn in Spanish, or any other languages from the same family. If you're learning German and you're Dutch, yeah, you get the idea. You don't need to do anything crazy or something. This is a huge waste of time. Half a year using Duolingo. In half a year, if you simply started listening to the language regularly, yeah, have the radio on, have a podcast on, and you start preparing some sentences and you translate them into the language that you're trying to learn, into Czech in this case. And then you start rehearsing those sentences. You start repeating them out loud. And you keep doing that. You keep adding more sentences and you read them aloud over and over again. This will be enough. Lots of listening and then repeating things aloud. For an easy language, this will be enough to end up understanding the language pretty well in a few months, and also to speak it relatively well if you just repeat sentences aloud. It's not that complicated. And input is not ideal if you don't know most of the vocab. If you're learning Chinese and you start with input, you're wasting your time. If you're learning Arabic and you start getting lots of input and you understand less than 10% of the vocabulary in the beginning, massive waste of time to learn via input. But in cases like this, where you already understand more than half of the input, yeah, go for it. Start listening, start reading, repeat things aloud, prepare your sentences, prepare your language islands, repeat those sentences aloud over and over, and you can understand and speak the language pretty well in a few months just by doing this. Just listen to it and repeat sentences aloud. It's not that complicated. Input is not the most efficient thing if you don't know the vocab. But if you know most of the vocab or a lot of the vocab already, it's so much better than doing things like Duolingo is just wasting your time, basically. There's no defense. There's no way. No one should be using it. No one should be especially defending it, because it's a massive, massive waste of time. The amount of language you learn with 1 hour of Duolingo a day is less than with 5 minutes of listening to the language. If it's a language that's relatively similar to yours, yeah. So if you speak one Slavic language and you're trying to learn another Slavic language, for example, just put a podcast on daily, and that's already, even if you zone out of it and you don't pay attention all the time, it's much more effective, and you get a lot more language in total than with Duolingo, because it's extremely slow. They feed you very first of all, vocabulary and the sentences they feed you are also useless, right? But they they also feed them to you really, really slowly. So the total amount of sentences and words you get in 1 hour is it's nothing. It's like less than 5 minutes, less than what you get in 5 minutes of conversation. Because conversation flows all the time. Like it's just constant talking. And if you already understand some of the vocab, you'll do fine. Maybe you won't understand much in the beginning, but if you keep listening to it, you'll understand more and more. Duolingo is extremely slow. It's a waste of time. It's extremely slow. You also have to look at it. So, yeah, massive waste of time. You can listen to a podcast or the radio while you make dinner every day. And that's already much more efficient than Duolingo. And then if you add language islands to it, you prepare sentences and you learn them, you can be speaking Czech pretty good in a few months. So, yeah. Long story short, don't use Duolingo, please.